Two games come to mind that illustrate some distressing issues with today's gaming culture. Mass Effect Andromeda is one of them. The other would be The Order 1886. However, that is another story for another time. The Mass Effect franchise is one that many gamers will have fond memories of, while some will be recalling memories of one of gaming's major disappointments. For a series that built itself as a story that was totally under the player's control, Mass Effect 3 proved that the creators of these stories wanted to give players varied choices, but they also wanted to tell the story they envisioned as the player's journey. The ending to the third game featured plenty of varied destinies based upon the player's choices throughout the franchise, but the biggest problem is that the player's choices affected everyone but the players themselves by the story's conclusion. When you've spent 3 lengthy games assuming you were shaping the destiny of Commander Shepard, only for that destiny to have nothing to do with your character and everything to do with the world around that character, it will lead to some disappointment. But what's worse is when the only destination it can lead to is martyrdom. That kind of bleak ending to your personal story is a bit of a slap in the face. Because martyrdom should be a last resort. The best of a totally fucked up beyond repair situation. That ending should have been reserved for players who made nothing but the most evil choices, and in the end decided to be a hero regardless. We think of martyrdom as the ultimate act of heroism by a truly noble hero. But I think that misconception is the result of a couple hundred years of religious oppression that is utilized to weaken the masses as opposed to uplifting them. Sure, Shepard beat the Reapers, but his sacrifice also sacrifices the knowledge he gained during his epic adventures. Where will the world go without his leadership? Sure, there'll be another to take charge, but without the wisdom of someone who's been through the brink and remained a hero? Where does the world end up? These are the kind of OCD thoughts that some Mass Effect fans had after the final entry in the original trilogy, and it was these thoughts that made Mass Effect Andromeda such a hard sell to start with. While gamers had a desire to go beyond the mass relay, many looked at Andromeda like the hot stove that had burnt them once as a child, and now they have a severe lifelong phobia of going anywhere near that skin-melting device known as a stove. Mass Effect Andromeda was destined to be a divisive game from the start, but it was clearly not intended to be that way at all. In fact, if you play the game, you would realize that Andromeda was meant to right the wrongs of the Milky Way galaxy. In a galaxy very, 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 very far from home, a new home for humanity was to be built utilizing all that we knew and loved about our first and most precious home. After all, that first place we call home is where our most formative memories are born. The memories which guide us through our grand adventures that take us so far from that place we knew as home. Those memories can create a sense of home no matter where you are, no matter how far you may be from the physical space that feels the most like home. You can not only carry a piece of that home with you, but you can build pieces of that home around you, so that sense of warm, familiar comfort can carry you through the unknown. The story of Commander Shepard was Star Wars, whereas the story of Pathfinder Ryder is Star Trek. Shepard's story was closer to action fantasy than true science fiction. Now, just so you know, the stick is up my ass because it feels very pleasant. But I'll try my best not to shove my stick up your ass. I'll let you shove your own stick up your own ass at your leisure. Unlike the first 3 Mass Effect games, This one was clearly written by someone with a major passion for science fiction. The first 3 games were great stories, don't get me wrong, but they really felt more like military fiction than science fiction. Being a space spy was dope, but becoming a Pathfinder is everything that science fiction is about. Shepard's job was to kill bad guys, plain and simple. Sure, he investigated shit. Sure, he discovered some sweet philosophical quandaries, but the focus was always on destroying the Reapers, with a dash of exploration and investigation. Ryder's job is to find a new home for humanity, and on top of that, to solve the issues that come with building a home for a mixture of different cultures, life forms, and gender identities. Instead of seeking a way to destroy an entire species, you are out to ensure the survival of a variety of species. Call me a pussy all you like, but I think that type of story is far more compelling and fascinating than a simple, kill those motherfuckers over there storyline. Yes, Shepard is tasked with many of the same objectives as Ryder, but the context that Ryder is in makes each of those tasks far more thought-provoking. Sure, you solve crimes as Shepard, but the context is that you're a cop in an established world. Ryder's like the sheriff of a town in the Wild West. You're there to define what justice is, not just carry out the predefined justice of that galaxy. You are defining justice for that new galaxy based on all you know about justice from your own experiences. Will you choose absolute justice, absolute compassion, or will you have the courage to know when and where to use both? The main plotline of Andromeda has only one ending, which actually makes all the little plots even more meaningful. While the results of each side story may be similar to the events that transpired in the Milky Way galaxy, it is the context that bolsters each event in Andromeda, as the implications of each side story now carry even further reaching consequences as you are in the midst of starting a whole new civilization. If you ever dreamed of boldly going where no one has gone before, then this is the game for you. While the original trilogy may have disappointed those with a passion for exploration and adventure, this now sadly standalone entry will leave you wanting more. Thankfully though, the story is, for the most part, a self-contained narrative that only has a few loose ends, and I actually think it's better for them. Not all mysteries are meant to be solved, and thanks to the game's super awesome mega happy ending, you are filled with hope knowing that while the story may be over, your story will surely live on now that your mind is filled with all the possibilities of the Pathfinder's continuing adventures. Yes, I have yet to mention any of the game's supposedly earth-shattering facial animation issues, and that is because they don't matter. While some of the animations can appear awkward, it is due to the fact that they were trying to convey far more emotional expression with the facial animations in this game. And yeah, they aimed really high. And it resulted in some missed shots, but those are just funny to look at and don't harm the game in the least. Which brings me to the distressing issues with gaming culture. Some gamers saw these animations as something to mock for shits and giggles, which actually led to the game being improved massively, which is why most of the animations in the game now are for the most part pretty outstanding. The issue is that gamers found these things funny until critics stepped in and told them it was an issue. In fact, they told gamers they were being taken advantage of. Critics actually said ish akin to, "For a game of this magnitude, it is unacceptable to have these kinds of poor, facial animations. Amadeus! Really, Mr. Perfect? It's unacceptable. So you mean to tell me a game that improves the series' combat mechanics to a point of near flawless perfection, where players are given huge, gorgeous environments to explore with classic-style platforming featuring modern improvements that make exploration an absolute delight, and a game that gives players a grand story to experience, and on top of that, they finally made the driving sections in a Mass Effect game fun as fuck. You're telling me that game is some kind of crime against gamers? Just for the facial animations being a bit awkward? Are we really this childish? Alright, the other main complaint, the story. Yes, the story which made me so randy that I randied myself all over this video.
What the?
Dad? Randy!
Oh, there was a ghost! This ectoplasm! Did you see the ghost? It ran through here, it slimed me! You son of a bitch! Oh, that wasn't me, that was a spooky ghost!
Stories are subjective, and while I can see why some gamers would prefer the action fantasy of the Milky Way galaxy, I find it very disconcerting that the general, critical consensus regarding a story of hope, exploration, and understanding is that it was a dull dud. Look, I love action and the whole fighting a big bad enemy thing as much as the next non-gender conforming person out there. But why is a story with a focus on adventure and life essentially shamed for choosing hope over strife? Why was a game that chose to tell a hopeful, positive story seen as a dud, as boring, as a waste of time for pursuing positivity? I understand everyone does not think that way, but doesn't it seem just a little bit worrisome that even with the hated ending of 3, Andromeda was hated mostly for its story, not just some silly-looking animations? What other reason is there to hate a game with superb gameplay, a great cast of characters, tons of meaningful content, and some of the most beautiful environments to ever grace a video game? The fact that it had some awkward animations? That's just bogus, dude! Face it, this game was review bombed for its story, and they used some awkward animations as a scapegoat. Why that worries me just a little bit, or actually quite a bit, is the fact that until some critics told these gamers that those animations were a big deal, the gamers only thought it was all a big joke, and sure, some of them were hating on the game just so they could nitpick it to death, but most either laughed at it or just saw it as no big deal. Until the critics came in proclaiming the game a disaster practically, and overnight, the franchise's future prospects became as bleak as 3's ending. But a great many gamers found it to be a highly enjoyable experience, and plenty preferred the fresh and inspired narrative, so why do critics keep getting it not only so wrong, but so distastefully wrong? A critic can be one of two things: a cunt who assumes his job is to criticize everything, or they can be humble and realize their job is not about telling people what to think, but helping them make choices. If you make a review all about your personal taste, then something like a story being based more in hope than despair could be seen as a negative, and fuck me if that's not an oxymoron, but in reality, the story's direction, unless executed poorly, should not factor into the game's score, You're not there to judge what players should think of the story. You're there to explain the premise and to say if the premise was executed well or poorly. While I know some critics claim that the story was executed poorly, that's simply not objectively true. The characters are well defined, the dialogue is well written, the story is original as far as games go, and I found the story to be more provocative, inspiring, and felt a much greater emotional resonance with Ryder than even my beloved Shepard. That may just be my opinion, but I'm also not placing a score or trying to claim that my opinion means the game is no good. Because as we all know, one life form's trash is another's treasure. So you can tell us how you personally did not like a story, but to claim the story was bad because you did not like it, that's just a dirty lie. Of course, this does leave out one key factor that also could explain why so many great games get review bombed for bullshit make-believe reasons. Some critics don't care about the game or even their own enjoyment of games. Some critics just want to watch the view counter rise. Some critics just want to watch good games burn for attention and a quick buck. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and soul for watching this love letter to a game that was unjustly hated, all because it was not the game that some thought it should be, and worse, because some saw an opportunity to make a profit by tearing down a work of art they could never in their life come close to achieving. For more informatively entertaining videos, head on down to that second star on the right, or, just type in megamediaoverload.com, and you'll want to stay there till the next morning, listening to our most excellent podcast, Hysterical Horizons, in addition to our full media archive. You can also follow us at Mega M Overload on Twitter to stay up to date with Mega Media Overload's unique brand of informative entertainment. Last but not least, if you really enjoyed the video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. It really helps channels like mine that are hidden like the red-headed stepchild you keep in the basement, so it won't infect the normal kids.
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.